What's your emergency?
Yeah, my next door neighbor broke into my house and stole my drugs.
911 what?
A fun, unique podcast taking you behind the badge. Unbelievable stories exploring the day in the life of a first responder. 911 is made possible by Carlos Bail Bonding and Eric Buchanan and Associates, fighting for those that have been denied disability, life, long-term care, and health benefits nationwide. Now, here's your host, DeMarlon Dean.
So welcome to 911 What? And boy, am I excited. Today's guest is Sadaka?
Yes.
Sadaka K. And I've been reading through some of the prep work for this, and we've got some exciting stories for you. We're going to talk about running into some burning buildings. We're going to talk about some crazy things he's seen and done. And we're going to find out how this guy went from prep cook to po-po. So, and also I'm going to find out what a bodega is. I'm going to show my ignorance. I don't even know what a bodega is, but I'm going to find out here. So first of all, I just want to thank everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for your support. It's been incredible. Thank you to Eric Buchanan and Associates for making this possible. Thank you to Carlos Bail Bonding for making this possible. You know, what I always want to say is don't be arguing on the side of the road. Just go ahead and take the ride and then call Carlos Bail Bonding and he can get you out. You can fight it in court. But thank all of you all so much. Make sure you like these episodes, make sure you share it with your friends. And if you want to see, no matter where you're listening, if you're listening on, whether it's Spotify, Apple, Pandora, or if you're even watching it, if you want to see the video versions, you can go to www.911what.com and check out the videos. I just appreciate your support. If you have any suggestions, or maybe you even have an officer or a first responder that you know that you'd like to have on as a guest, and just send me an email, 911what.podcast@gmail.com. That's 911what.podcast@gmail.com. So we're going to get right back here in just a second here, a message from our sponsor. Then we'll be right back with Sadaka K. So listen, one of the main reasons I started this podcast is to help us all understand what first responders go through, what it's like to be a first responder, some of the decisions they have to make on a day-to-day basis. And in the end, hopefully we can all be better, come away knowing a little bit more about each other, and make this world a better place. And to that end, if you find yourself in a situation where you are facing potential arrest, one of the things I hope you learn from this podcast is to don't fight. Don't try to plead your case there on the street. Don't argue with the officer. Don't fight back. Just go ahead. Let them place you under arrest so that that's the worst that can happen is that you're under arrest. And then let's fight it in court. Call my friends at Carlos Bail Bonding to get you out. That's Carlos Bail Bonding. You can check them out online. They're at bailbondsmanchattanooga.com. That's bailbondsmanchattanooga.com. And you can go to the website and see what all their clients say. You don't want to fight on the side of the street. Just go ahead and be arrested if you have to. Call Carlos. They'll get you out. Then you can get you an attorney and you can fight it in the court of law. You can also give them a call at 475-6383. That's area code 423, of course. 475-6383. And again, that website is bailbondsmanchattanooga.com. Fight in court, not on the side of the street. So welcome back, and Sadaka.
Excellent.
Man, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you are, what you've done as far as, I know you've been on 13 years and you've done a lot in those 13 years, but tell us, again, what department you're with, if you're okay with that, and kind of what you've done in that department so far.
All right. Well, first off, I'd like to thank you for having me. It's an honor, and I really appreciate the opportunity. Don't mind me. I got drinking coffee at up here. It's almost 8 o'clock at night, but I was up at 3:30 in the morning with the little one. So
you got a little one. Congratulations.
I got a little one. She keeps me active, but she's my motivation. So
well, my motto is better you than me.
Yes.
Been there, done that.
My name is Sadaka K, and I am born and raised in the city of Albany, New York. We're actually the capital city of New York State. Mm-hmm. And I've been a police officer for 13 years with the city municipal police department. We have county deputies that kind of oversee the county. Then, state police are out. There's a bunch of different agencies within the city, but I'm one of the city PDs out here. Where do I start? I was born and raised in Albany. My mom and late father, my father passed away in 2019. They were both immigrants. So we're first generation here. My father and mother ended up establishing their roots in Albany. And that's where me, my older brother, and my siblings were born, running up and down the streets and, causing trouble in teenage years and all that, but we'll talk about that in a minute. And what happened was I ended up, my older brother went into the military right out of high school, and my older brother's my best friend. So it was kind of one of those things where I was supposed to do the same thing he did. Graduate high school, go into the military. But at the time when he went into the Army, that was maybe some of the younger listeners won't know what it was like. But when 9/11 happened, and then, the Iraqi Freedom War. Right. So he was overseas. He did 2 tours in Iraq back in 2004 when everything popped off. When he came back, I was just getting out of high school, and he actually told me not to join the military. He told me, let's, take your brains and your studies and go to college. So that's what I did. And I did 4 years at the State University of Oneonta. It's a small town, about an hour and a half west of Albany. I did 4 years there, and I studied psychology, and I got a psychology degree. And when I came home, my older brother he had joined a police force. My older brother had joined the police. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. Okay. I had one of the cameras was actually not on, so I wanted to turn it on.
Worries.
Yeah, I can hear you just fine. I got my little headphones.
No worries. My older brother. So simultaneously when he was deployed, he had joined the police force here, and I was a little indifferent, growing up around the police department in my city, but like I said, we'll talk about that in a minute. But he had joined the force, and he knew that I was graduating college. So he just put up the idea of the opportunity. He said, they're giving the police test, why don't you become a police officer like me? And I said, excuse my language, hell no, because number one, just the culture in general wasn't something that I really agreed with. And, that's probably partial. And I learned that's actually mostly my fault in the long run. But also, it's a dangerous job. It's a dangerous job in Albany. It's got its violence, and it's a busy city, and it's not a large city, but it's one of the larger, smaller cities, and there's a lot going on. I just didn't want to be in the middle of wildness or violence or, something bad happening to me. And I just thought the job of being a police officer was just crazy, so never really sparked my interest. But my first daughter was born, and I was kind of in the middle of jobs. The dishwasher job that I had, the prep cook and dishwasher job that I had, I actually started out as a dishwasher, and I had that job from when I was 17. Okay. So when I got out of college, I couldn't really find a job, but the idea was maybe to go to grad school and study more, because what I wanted to do is I wanted to be a psychiatrist. I wanted to work with mental health and work with troubled youth, or, people with mental health disorders and things like that. But I knew it took a lot of school, and I'm not a book person. I read a lot, but I couldn't do any more school. Sure. So I was basically just washing dishes. And then I had another job at a call center at the hospital. And it was basically 2 jobs, because I needed to support my daughter, who was, at the time she was only like a year, my first daughter. Yeah. So, and then,
hold on, let me interrupt you there for a second. So you had a college degree.
Yep.
And you were basically dishwasher, prep cook, working multiple jobs just to make ends meet.
Yep.
You still didn't want to go to be a popo.
Absolutely not.
Okay.
I've not zero even thought about that. Like, even in college, when you think about what are you going to do, in high school or out of college, zero thought, never crossed my mind. And it's bizarre, because I absolutely, I love it. I love it. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. So, but going forward, I just said, people start talking when you're younger, and as you get older, you forget what it's like to be in your early 20s, and there's a lot of pressure, and your social life means a lot to you, and your reputation is being built, and it means a lot. And a lot of people were trying to say I was going to be a deadbeat dad, and that kind of goes with the stereotype a little bit.
Sure.
And they, back in the day, they didn't have, like, for the younger listeners, again, they didn't have these apps and all these sites. But there was this website, and it was called scumbag.com. And this is the catalyst of changing of everything. It was my first daughter, basically. But there's a website called scumbag.com, and I didn't really even know about it. And this is 2007, and the internet, was just up and coming. And somebody told me about it, and they're like, I saw your name on it. And I'm like, what? And they're like, I saw your name. Like, and they typed it in, and I was on there, and 2 people commented on it. One was, it was nasty. It was like, this guy's going to be a deadbeat. He don't care about his daughter, blah, blah, blah. And then somebody commented on it and defended me. I don't even know who these people were. Like, it was funny. I was like, yo, thank you. Some dude defended me. And that was it. But that hit me. It really hurt me. It hurt me to the point where I'm like, all right, like, no matter like what I do from here on out, it's not about me. And life's really not about me anymore. So I said, I got to do something. The job that I was dishwashing offered me a prep cook job, a permanent job. But it paid nothing. It paid it was like at the time, and this is a lot, 2007, it only paid like 28 grand a year, but it had benefits. And the court was saying,
all right, well, hold on a second. Yeah. Let me bring you in a little reality check. So 2007, you had a dishwashing prep cook job that paid 28 grand a year. When I joined the police department in 1990, end of 91, take a guess at what my starting salary was here in Chattanooga.
I would say, I'm going to lowball this. I'm going to say 25 grand.
Yeah, you lowballed it. All right. It was 18,700.
Oh, wow.
$18,700 to be a police officer and be shot at.
If you don't mind me asking, though, what was at the time? What's the cost? What's the average cost of like a mortgage where you lived at the time?
Gosh, what was it back then? I think I did own a duplex, and it was, it was low 100s, maybe even actually that one and it wasn't in a great part of town. It actually may have been just below $100,000. So much lower cost of living, but still 18,000 was, I took a pay cut. I was in sales before that. And I was making at 20 years old, I was making about 30 grand, and I took it.
And that's a lot. And I was going to say, cause 18,000 back then, that probably still wasn't a lot of money. Obviously I'm assuming, right?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't at all.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
No. You know what? It's funny because we're and I'll get to this too. Our department right now, Albany, when I got on, it was people were leaving the state police, which is the state police in New York. They're probably the highest paid state police in the country. I think New York, because when Governor Pataki came in back in the late 90s, he gave them it was like a 15% or something crazy, like salary bump. So, but at the time when I came on, people were leaving all the other agencies to come to Albany to work. And then, there was other factors. They cut overtime, all this other stuff. And now everyone's leaving. And we're the most underpaid police department right now I think in the state, actually, believe it or not, the capital city of the state. But, I'll talk about that later, too, because, I don't care. It needs to be talked about. And it's a big factor of, our work environment and the city safety, too. So, but I couldn't take the job. It wasn't enough money. I was living at home. Living at home with my mom and dad. I just out of college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was still kind of in that party mode where I want to go out and, talk to the ladies and, bar hop on the weekends and do all that. So I was still trying to have fun, but, I had a daughter, and at the time, none of my other friends had kids. I mean, all my circle of my friends, they are just becoming fathers. She's about to be 16 this year.
Wow.
So I was early, so I knew I had to do something. So I bit the bullet and I said, you know what? I'm just going to take the police exam. And I was like, there's no way they're going to hire me. So I took the police exam. I actually took it one time, and then I needed to finish a couple credits to get my degree. So I went back to school for one semester. They canvassed me. I turned it down. I went back, finished, took it again, passed. And then that was the time when I was home out of college. So in my head, I go, there's no way they're gonna hire me. My background, I've been arrested. I was like, I got in trouble. Like, there's no way that they're gonna hire me. But I said, you know what? I'm going, because my brother's pressuring me. My parents want to see me do something. Let me just, just satisfy them and take the test. So I took the test, passed it, and then they called me in for the interview. Somehow did great on that. Then I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna pass the background. They said, you know what, your arrest wasn't that serious. It was nonviolent, blah, blah, blah. It actually got knocked down to a violation, which isn't a crime. You passed. So I'm like, all right, pass the psych. And it got to the point where I got that call and they were like, we want to swear you in. And I'm like, there's no way. But I got at that point, I was starting to wrap my mind into the career that I was going to potentially take. So I started to get into it. I'm like, what? Like running every day, I was excited. I was like, reading up on penal law. Like I'm ready to actually do this because my personality type is if I get into something, I go 110%. There's no like half-ass doing anything. It's got to be done 110%. And so they hired me and, 6 months of the academy in 2008. So I turned the other job down, did the 6 months in the academy and, what I learned and saw in the academy, it amped me up. And then I knew my brother already had, at the time, he had like 3 years on already. And now going in the beginning part of my career, and this is where I'll end it now and I'll let you go forward. But I can just say in the beginning part of my career, I probably in hindsight they should not have given me a badge and a gun at 22 years old.
Yeah.
I don't think that is an appropriate age for somebody to be serving and protecting a community that is anywhere from people that are 100 years old to babies. Your frontal lobe isn't developed correctly yet. You can't even decision make yet. Right. So it was my first couple years were a little bit on the wild side, not in a bad way, but it was like the cliche stereotype you hear about a cop, and then you become your own person. As you do it, you become your own person. And then there's a lot of things that I saw that I didn't agree with, laws that I still don't agree with, policies I don't agree with,
Okay.
But discretion. So,
yes. Well, that's great. Cause I also see in the notes that you actually did some policy writing and things like that. So we can talk about that a little bit later as well. But yeah, I think you're right. Here you are at 22 years old. You haven't really, or most people at 22 haven't really experienced life. And now you have to make decisions that are going to affect other people's lives that could affect them for the rest of their life. Absolutely. So, yeah, there's something to be said about that. You're right. The age at which you can become a police officer, that's a little young.
What I thought was very unique and bizarre when I was new, when you go to somebody's house and you're 22, 23, and you're talking to a 45-year-old man and you're giving him orders and stuff like that. And he's twice your age. It was just that part of the job is bizarre to me, but
yeah. Yes, it is. It's crazy. And you also, I think that's where you have that that complex can come in where it is that's where the ego comes in, especially when you're super, super young, you have that ego. I think every officer goes through a phase when they're first a police officer that they want to prove themselves and they stand behind that badge and, hey, you're going to do what I say because. But for most people, or at least for me, in my experience was that kind of wore off after a while. You get to a place where, look, I'm going to go to work. I'm going to put in my 8 hours, 10 hours, whatever kind of shift you work, and I'm going to get home. And if the public lets me, I'm going to do as little as possible.
That happens.
Yeah.
Complacent, being complacent.
Absolutely. And I think if the public understood that and had that mentality, all right, if I just show a little bit of sense, show a little bit of respect, chances are, not saying I'm going to get out of whatever the consequences are, but the consequences can certainly be minimal if you just do those basic things.
Absolutely. There's a time and a place for everything. And sometimes battling and fighting isn't literally battling and fighting physically, people work systems all day long, all over the world, but you have to be a part of the system too. And everybody has their role. So the machine works correctly. Now, I do a lot of educating and talking in the schools with the youth. And a lot of my teacher friends, they've heard me speak before, and they're like, can you come in and speak to my students? Because I tell it how it is, and I tell them that, you know, there's a way to carry yourself. There is a way to, you know, in my opinion, perception is everything. Perception is everything. And there's a way to carry yourself and, you know, to basically make you successful, or to not get you in trouble, or to not get you hurt or killed.
Sure.
And it's not about throwing your emotion into it right on the spot. You know, I tell people simply is this, and I'll play the devil's advocate against police. If a cop stops you and they're doing, and it's an illegal stop, or they're going against procedure or policy or law to do something, why, instead of trying to resist or, you know, hold court right on the street there, let him do his thing, take mental notes or even physical notes about times and places and what he's doing and when he did it and what he said, you know, go through the arrest process, be booked, you know, at worst, at most, spend the night in a you know, the ball pin, and get out, you know, be arraigned, and then go hire a lawyer, a damn good lawyer, you know what I mean? And then bring all that information to him. And then you will not only probably become very rich, but that officer will, you know, there will be justice, you know.
Absolutely.
And so, and I tell kids, it's easier said than done, you know, but I think society's teaching us that it's okay to lash out right on the spot. But I think the smarter people in society know that, you know, they know these tricks, you know, and they know. So, but
yeah, you're not going to win on the side of the road. And that's why, you know, I thought a perfect sponsor was Carlos Bail Bonding. Call Carlos. If you're in Chattanooga, the surrounding areas, call Carlos Bail Bonding, go to jail, take the ride, and fight it in court, because you're not going to win on the side of the street.
No.
Period. Even if you get away, you're not going to win.
No.
There's no code among the criminals out there. You're going to go out there, you're going to run your mouth, somebody's going to tell on you. Just don't do it. But yeah, that's a good message. So let me ask you this then. You like I said, you went from prep cook to police officer and thought you'd never do it because you didn't really like police. Let's talk about your experience or why that was, if you don't mind.
All right. And this is what I'm saying is completely 100% true experience. I'm actually the one situation I'm going to talk about where I got put down at gunpoint. I'm actually meeting up with, that was one of my best friends. He was visiting from downstate. He lives over by New York City. Okay. And I'm meeting up with him on Friday. I haven't seen him in years. You know, he was in the Air Force and he was my buddy in college. And we were talking about it. I go, you know what? I'm going on this podcast in a couple of days. And I go, you remember that time when, and I'll talk about it in a minute. He goes, yo. And I'm like, people probably don't even think I'm telling, like, that's a real story. I'm like, that was a real story. And it happened literally. So anyways, all right. Growing up in Albany's a very diverse city. I mean, New York in general, you know, certain parts of New York, usually, you know, mostly probably in the southern state, it's a little bit more, segregated by neighborhoods, but Albany's a unique city because it actually is 70% people of color that live in the city. But the neighborhoods aren't it's not like, you know, white neighborhood, black neighborhood, Spanish neighborhood. There is that, but I noticed in some of the neighborhoods it's mixed. You know, you got just as many white people as black people or whatever. So I had a diverse upbringing, especially being raised by immigrant parents. Mm-hmm. So, you know, I hung out with multiple groups, you know, but I'm from a city and, you know, not to go into detail, but, you know, I did stupid things and, mm-hmm. you know, some of my friends are in prison. I have some friends that were killed and, you know, I have a lot of friends that were just perfectly fine, successful, functioning people in society today. So that being said, you know, a lot of the encounters and the run-ins that I had, like in the parks and on the corners as a teenager, early teenage years was, you know, that's mostly my fault, you know, just just wanting to hang out, be cool. Yeah. Now in 2004, I went to Oneonta and I went to college, and college got, you know, I needed to get out of the city of Albany. I felt like, because, you know, when you're from somewhere like that, you feel like if you stay where you're from, that you're going to be sucked into the drama and the nonsense, and you're just going to become another statistic of, you know, what's going on. So I needed to get out. I wanted to leave home, so I went to college, and I thought college was going to be better. And it actually got worse, because then there's drinking there's, you have an environment with drinking, drugs, women, partying, all the rowdiness and all that stuff. So it got a little wild it got more wild in college. And I remember my mother, God bless her, she stuck by my side. She told me, because I had gotten in trouble on campus, and they removed my status of living on campus. So my late father, God rest his soul, was so angry that he said, you're moving back in home. He thought that he needed to chaperone me through my, my early 20s and make sure that I do go to school and I stay out of trouble, because his household was very, it was a tight rule. Mm-hmm. But my mother, my mother never gave up on me, and my father's like, well, if you go back there, you're going to get in trouble. I'm not paying for your tuition. My mother said, I will pay for your tuition, Sadaka, because I know it seems like you really want to go back there, and it's for all the wrong reasons at the time. I just wanted to have a good time. She said, the only thing I do, so I ended up getting an apartment off campus. I lived with one of my other best friends who he's actually a cop now in Ithaca, and I'm supposed to meet up with him on Friday too. They're my two fraternity brothers. Nice. And so I moved in with him, and my mother says, and this is true, she says, Sadaka, I took over the loan. We got you an apartment. I'm paying for your apartment while you go to school. The only thing I ask you to do is do not get arrested. The first day of class, I swear, the first day of class, I got arrested.
Oh my goodness.
I was at a bar, and there was a fight broke out between a bunch of college students. It was one of the popular bars of the school. Mm-hmm. And everybody was outside, and there was like a big melee of a fight. And I didn't even really do anything. I didn't even think I threw a punch, really. I was just kind of in it. Now, I'll say this to say that, because the cop that arrested me ended up getting fired 7 years later. And this, if you research Oneon in New York, there is a case back in the early 90s where the cops rounded up all the black students in the campus. And because a woman who happened to be white said that she got robbed, she got her purse snatched and knocked down, and the guy ran away. She didn't even get a look at the guy. But when the cops interviewed her, she said it was a black guy. Mm-hmm. So they went on campus and they rounded up all the black students and to ID her. And it was like a whole big story. I guess there was like all these like big news stories about it and stuff. And so that's the kind of town it is. Okay. So the cop came up, and I'm just kind of like, talking or whatever. And he comes up and he grabs me from behind and, slams me on the car. And I think he was excessive, in my opinion. But, so basically I spent the night in jail for disorderly conduct, took my bail, they processed me. I spent the night in a cell, in a freaking jail cell out there. And one of my other friends who was in the military, he actually just passed away a couple months ago. He bailed me out. And then my father was, so that was the first encounter. So the charges ended up getting like reduced. I mean, it was a violation. It got reduced. I mean, I obviously had to disclose this when I got hired to the department or whatever. So, but that was strike one. Mm-hmm. And that was, so then in 2006, 3 years later. So anyways, by the way, not to before I go forward, that the cop that arrested me, I read an article, because they fired two cops and one resigned before they fired him. And he was one of the three for, they had all these misconduct complaints against them and stuff. And I actually I had to verify it. So, cause in my memory, so I actually Googled it, and you could still read the articles in the paper from 2010. But the funny thing was, I happened to be able to go back there for an alumni weekend, and I saw him, and I was a cop, and then I showed him my bag, and we talked. He was like, I can't believe, he was like, number one, you used to be skinny, you got all muscular, and he's like, good for you. And we talked, and then a couple months later, I learned he was doing all this crazy stuff, and he got fired. So, that I had to put that in there. People can have their opinion on what happened to me, and then that kind of cop that he was, and what happened. So I'm not going to call it, I'm not going to say it was racial. Because I was in the wrong. I shouldn't have been in that situation, fighting with people or whatever the heck I was trying to do, trying to be cool. That's my fault. So I take 100% responsibility, but, why just me? Why not? There was, there was a lot of other people there of all different colors. So sure. 2006, my friend from college that I'm going to see on Friday or in 2 days, he came to visit Albany. Now he's from a city called Peekskill, and it's right outside of the Yonkers, upper New York City, Bronx area. So, he's from a city too. So he comes up to visit me in Albany, and we're walking down the street, and I'm just like, we're going to some bar, and I see 3 Albany cops. And, at the time we're 20, we just turned 21. And we're walking and we see these cops in a parking lot. It looks like they're like talking to each other. And I'm like, see the cops over there? And he's like, yeah. They look at us, they get in their cars, drive like 200 feet, like pull up, hop out the car with their guns drawn. And they're like, get on the ground right now, get on the ground. We were like, yo, what the? Yo, so obviously we complied. We got on the ground, handcuffed us. And
you guys were just walking down the street.
Just walking down the street. Going to the bar. I was going to say hi to them because my brother had just became a cop at the time. He only had like a year on or something, 2 years on. And so that's when I started to kind of have respect for because I started to see actually who these cops were, and they're real people. They're actually very good people, so, and I liked a lot of them. So I was going to say hi. And I knew a couple of people at the time because guys that were graduated before me were becoming cops. And so there was a lot of people that I knew were becoming cops, And so they handcuff me, they handcuff him, and they are like, they see who I am. And one of the other cops I went to high school with, he was brand new too. He comes over and, they kind of dust us off, and then they're joking. And I specifically remember, I didn't know what rank or sergeant or any of that was, but I remember what I thought at the time was a supervisor coming to the scene and yelling at the cops that did that to us. I don't know if I'm imagining that because it was so long ago, but I remember because I was pissed. I was like, yo, man, you almost shot me. At first I was scared. Sure. And then I was mad, and what they said happened was, there was a robbery that happened around the corner, literally a couple minutes ago. And they were like, you guys fit the description. So, we're now again, I did this time. I wasn't doing nothing, but maybe it was 2 black males. Maybe it was, I don't know. It probably, I had to have been, but anyways, I didn't ask what the description was. I didn't make a big stink about it. I actually, at the time I was mad, but then I was kind of like, all right, you guys are doing the job. You know what I mean? Doing the job. So, but my buddy was outraged. So that's strike 2.
Yeah. And I'll stop you, pause you there, because I think it's important that, again, I don't know if there was a robbery going on or not, but if there was, and you guys really did fit the description, then that's exactly what they're supposed to do. However, part 2 of that is as soon as they realize or can ascertain that it's not you guys, they need to tell you guys, hey, sorry about that. This is why we did this, yada, yada, yada. But we also know that sometimes, and historically, that's been an excuse. Oh, you fit the description just to get somebody, whether there is or not. But that's also pretty easy to verify. You can check with dispatch or whatever. Hey, was there a robbery? What was the description? And figure all that out. Now, I know you don't want to do it on the side of the road with the police there, but that is pretty easy to verify.
And you know what I do now, and this is what I was taught when I was in field training, that if you're stopping somebody for that reason, easily just stand next to them with your radio and say, dispatch, can I get that description again? And then they'll be like, all right, black male, pink shirt, whatever. And then if that person's wearing it, they can hear it. So they know you're not making it up. Right. So that's a tactic we do now. Just so people don't think that we're out there, just stopping people and saying that you fit a description when there wasn't even a call or something. So, but I don't know why that time I wasn't so angry, but literally, I want to say this is months later. And this is, and all the stop I just talked about and the stop I'm going to say now, this all happened within a year or 2 of me being hired. So this is getting close to my, the time where I actually became a cop. So a couple of months later, I'm walking home from the bar and I'm with a bunch of buddies. And we used to chill in this park called Richfield Park. And, we used to freestyle and just kick it. It would be 30 heads, you did when you were 13, 14, 15. So we hadn't been there. We were walking through and we happened to pass it. So we're like, yo, man, the good old park. So we were like, let's just cut through, talk about some memories, reminisce for a second on our way home. And we stop at the water fountain and we're chilling, we're like, oh, you remember when that happened over there or whatever? And all of a sudden, because in Albany there's a curfew on parks. It's dusk to dawn. You're not supposed to be in there, and so we just see these flashlights, like, over by the building, flashlights. We hear keys, so we know what that is. You know what I mean? So we're like, oh shit, it's cops or security, whatever. So we start trying to walk away real fast, and one of them's like, stop. And he tackles my boy, and there's like a hill, and they basically just tackled us. And it was funny because I ended up working like in the same car as the one guy that did this stop. I won't say any names or anything, but he's a good dude, great dude. You know what I mean? He's from Albany too, great, phenomenal cop. And so basically they detained us, and they were like, they said that there was been a lot of complaints from the neighborhood about people smoking weed and drinking in the park. And I'm like, we're not, I mean, maybe we used to do that like 8 years ago. I'm like, we're old now. We're just passing through. And, they were giving us a hard time. So I ended up making a smart remark to the one guy, and he got real mad. And then he called my brother, because at the time my brother was brand new, and he called my brother in the middle of the night. This is like 2 a.m, And my brother wasn't happy about it. And he's like, listen, you're trying to get on the force. You need to not have negative interaction with any police, let alone like the police in your own city. And, and I'm like, yo, so I got mad at him, like, yo, those are your boys, man, screw them. Like, I'm not even doing nothing. And then I had a period where I was very angry at the police. Like, I was like, screw this. I don't want this job. Like, why do I want to take a career, locking people up or harassing people? I'm like, screw these dudes. Like, they're all like tough. So then I got mad, but then I ended up like, I was mature. So when I calmed down, I was like, you know what? I can actually, if I get in the force, I think I could be good at this job in a different way. And at the time I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that there was something that I could bring to the table about Sadaka to the police department that may change everything. And I think there's been a lot of, I get a lot of followers and a lot of ears in the last couple of years. So maybe I'm onto something, but those were the interactions that I've had with the police. And, I've had several more as a cop, you know what I mean? And, if you want to hear about those, we could talk about those later too. But, I've had one in New York City with a New York City police officer in 2016. And, he got in my face and but so it happens, what happens, you have to decipher if the person's actually really doing their job or not. It goes with any career field. I get mad at somebody that doesn't make my burger right. You know what I mean? But if you know that they were trying to make that burger, they just were, they made a mistake or something like that, or they were rushing, or they had a bad day at home, eat the burger. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's missing ketchup, but I can catch up next time. That's the way I look at life. But
sure. You give people a little grace now.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that is great. That is really great. This is really good. So my guest today is Sadaka K. And we've talked a little bit about where he was before becoming a police officer, which in turn helped him become a really good police officer on the other side of that. And you said a mouthful. You said a lot of things. You've talked about a guy that tackled you and you weren't happy at all. And then you turned around and said you worked with him and he's a really good officer.
Yes.
But that really good officer at the time, you were thinking he was a jerk, So I think that says a mouthful right there.
That's interesting. I didn't look at it like that.
Yeah. I mean, he's a really good officer, but it all depends on where you are in that situation. Yeah. And then you own when you did have a part in it, even though it may have been a minor part, you own that part. And then we talked about situations where really you weren't doing anything. You guys weren't violating anything, but maybe you were somewhere where you shouldn't have been at that particular time, but you weren't really breaking any laws, not intending to. And I think that's where that officer discretion sometimes comes in, where you can de-escalate something. You can tell if somebody's up to no good. Usually, you've got that gut, and you can tell when these guys are just kicking it. See ya.
Absolutely.
And sometimes that's where it goes wrong. That interaction, you come in too high, or you've had that bad day as a police officer. You don't care. You're gonna show them who's boss. Mm-hmm. So that's great. I appreciate you sharing those with me. So we're going to take a break, hear from our sponsor, and then when we return, we're going to talk about some of these crazy calls that you've been on. You guys, and I'm looking through here, some pretty scary ones too. So don't go away. We will be right back. Listen, you know how frustrating it is to pay your insurance premiums for anything. Your home, your car. You have some type of accident or some type of catastrophe occurs, and then the insurance finds reasons not to pay you. It's really, really frustrating, isn't it? Imagine that same scenario when it comes to your disability insurance. Now, you've actually gone and got extra disability insurance through whether, it's through your employer or you went on a private market and bought this insurance in case you had some type of disability that prevented you from doing your job. And then something unfortunate happens and you can't do your job anymore. You call the insurance company and guess what? They deny your claim for something that's just ridiculous. Ridiculous. That's when you need to call Eric Buchanan and Associates. They will come to your aid, review your claim, and fight for your rights that you've been paying for. Take this for instance. There was a gentleman that had been paying their disability premiums for years. And he was a contractor, so he built homes, built houses, built all kinds of things. And he had a debilitating head injury that prevented him from doing that. And he was denied his claim because of, guess what? He was making sandwiches. Can you believe that? He was helping his daughter make sandwiches for a business that she started. He even had to write some of the recipes on the wall so that he wouldn't forget them himself. And they said, if you can make sandwiches, surely you can build a house. Come on now. So if something like that happens to you, call Eric Buchanan and Associates. Their number is 877-634-2506. Again, that's 877-634-2506. Or you can look them up online, BuchananDisability.com. That's BuchananDisability.com, BuchananDisability.com. You won't regret it. All right, welcome back to 911 What? Our guest today is Sadaka K from the Albany, New York Police Department. Thanks again for coming. And let's get into some of these calls now. You're not a fireman, but you shared a story about running into a burning building. Tell us about that.
So this was definitely one of the scariest moments on the job. So I'm working midnights. I was a midnight patrolman for 4 or 5 years. I miss it actually. It was actually pretty cool. See a lot of cool things. They say nothing good happens after dark or after 2 a.m. or whatever. So, but I'm literally just patrolling my zone. Radio on. It's like kind of like the beginning of the shift. And it's quiet, like literally no calls going out. I had to like literally check that, those nights where you check if your radio's still on,
Yes.
Like you gotta check because you're like, oh crap. So I'm driving and I turned down, and it happened to be at the time I lived maybe 3 blocks from where this was happening. So I'm like turning down the street, and I turned down Warren Street from Quayle Street, and I just see this house on fire. And it's like literally on fire. And I'm like, I didn't hear nothing over the air. Literally, as I pull, like I'm driving, like kind of comprehending what I'm seeing, a call goes out, because with the, how it is with when the fire, like a structure fire goes out, they say they got to send the police immediately too. Mm-hmm. So they put the call out like an active structure fire on whatever, so-and-so Warren Street. And I'm like, yep, I'm here, and so, and you know what, ironic, that house that was on fire, my brother used to live in that building.
What?
Yup, he lived in there. I told the next day, I'm like, Z, your old apartment burnt down. He's like, oh, Warren Street. Wow. So I get there, I pull up, and the house is literally, it's the back of it's on fire. And I'm going to paint a picture for anybody who has never saw like how fierce and wild an actual fire is, like a full engulf fire is. Mm-hmm. So I pull up, and there's a guy, there's a lady, there's like a young lady, and she's outside in the street. And she's like, I live upstairs. And I'm like, I get out and I'm like panicking. I'm like, is there anybody else in the house? She goes, yeah, I don't live with anybody. She's like, my downstairs neighbor's right there. And I think he lives alone. So I look, and this guy is in the doorway of the building. There's smoke starting to come out. The fire's not in the front of the house yet. It's still in the back, but it's catching. And the smoke's coming out, and he's in his underwear. And it's the middle of winter. It was the middle of December. It was cold, like real cold. And he's in his underwear. He had like a robe on that he dropped. And he's in his underwear, and he's covered in this like this smut, like this like char. And I'm like, yo, are you okay, sir? Like, I'm going to drag him out. And he goes, no, my dogs are in there. And I'm like, it doesn't, like, I got to drag you out. Like, so I drag him out. Like, I drag him at least to like the front of the porch. And he's like, my dogs are in there. He's crying. I hear the dogs, like, you know, and this is going to get sad for some of you listeners, but I hear the dogs yelping, and I foster dogs. You know, me and my wife, we foster pit bulls, and I'm a big animal lover. So I had to do something. The fire department's not there yet. No one's there yet. It's literally a quiet road at like 1 a.m. And like the neighbors didn't even see it yet. This thing's like starting to pick up. Smoke's billowing. So what I do is I know a little bit. I know to get low, and I know all the stuff you learn in grade school. So I tried to get low under the smoke. Now, if nobody has ever seen an active structure fire on like a building or like a real big fire, the heat alone is fierce. Now, the smoke is ridiculous. I mean, and we're not equipped, you know what I mean? Like, I had no gas mask, nothing. So I tried to climb under the smoke because the way the house was, when you walk in the door, he had a couch that aligned where the door was. And all I had to do was go around the couch and grab the dog because they were on the other side of the couch. Mm-hmm. If there wasn't enough smoke, I probably could have hopped over the couch and grabbed the dog, but I had to try to go around. Wasn't happening. I made it maybe 5 feet in, and I just inhaled all of this like fumes, and I went out coughing up all this stuff. And he's pleading, so I tried to go in again. And I tried to go in again, and now the fire is real bad. Now it's like in the front, and the second time I made it maybe 2 feet, and then I was like, I can't go in, and then the dogs. I ended up, you know, we never got the dogs out, but you know, the lady, everybody else got out, the neighbors got out, and yeah. So then I had the ambulance came, and I had to go. You know, they had me on the oxygen in the ambulance, and I had to go to the hospital. I had, you know, minor smoke inhalation, so they kept me in the hospital for a while, and my lieutenant was not happy. He and the reason why is very valid. He explained and he said, I know you like to do the right thing, Sadaka, but I am the one that has to do notifications for something like that. And he's like, how am I going to, and I wasn't married at the time, but you know, I have family. Sure. So how am I going to go and explain to your family that your son's not coming home from a ship because he tried to rescue 2 dogs? Yeah. And he's like, I know, I love animals too. But he said, it's not worth risking your life because you're not equipped. Firemen, you know, they have all the equipment. He's like, you don't have any of that or the training. So he's like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? Like you're basically walking into a disaster. And I thought about it and I'm like, he's right. You know, I mean, you can only go as far as your means, man, you know, and I didn't have them, but I tried and I'm glad it didn't end worse. But it made me realize that fires are a real thing. So, you know, just a thing for just the general public out there, make sure you have a plan. You know, because, you know, I've talked to some firemen after the fact, and they teach you things like feel the wall, like tactics you could do if you can't see, because they can't see either, even with the mask, you know, it's pitch black. So they know like how to ride the wall and do all that stuff. And it's interesting, you know what I mean? And don't break a window because of flash. You know, yeah, I don't know if people know what that is, but the like if you break a window, the oxygen will suck in, and, you know, that will be the whole building pretty much explode. But so that was that call. But, you know, fire department ended up coming, and, you know, it took the house was, you know, totaled and demolished. But yeah, won't do that again.
Yeah. And then, you know, sometimes I say this kind of jokingly. I'm be like, you know, if I was there, I'm like, yeah, I love animals too, but not that much, dude. Sorry. But the truth of the matter is, you know, as a police officer, you are there to do whatever you can to help, and your instinct kind of takes over. And obviously, you know, that heat took over even more, though. You couldn't go any further, but I understand why you tried.
The fight or flight kicks in, and it's a real thing, even for police officers. We're not robots, and you know, cops freeze, cops flee, and yeah, I guess I'm always one that just for some stupid reason, not stupid reason, but I just end up running into it, and then after the fact, I'm like, holy crap, that could have ended real bad, you know, like. But hey, man. Like, you
my brother's a fireman here in the city. My father was a fireman and police because they did both at the airport. And my son, my next to youngest son, he'll be graduating from the Air Force in less than 2 weeks as a firefighter. So he'll be a firefighter. Yeah. So while we're talking about that, you know, that could have gotten pretty scary. So this is another warning here. You know, we might be getting, you know, into some pretty terrible territory. So if you're really sensitive about some I'm not saying we're gonna get graphic, but this is going to be some disturbing things we're going to talk about. So just a little warning here. You know, I asked you about heart-wrenching calls. So we'll talk about some of the heart-wrenching calls since we talked about the fire and the dogs while we're here, and then we'll get to some lighter stuff. And one of the things that really stuck out to me when I read my notes and getting ready for this, some of the things that really were disturbing to you were parallel to the things that I was only on for 4.5 years as full time. And we talked about this a little bit before we started. Yeah, it is enough. But I experienced some of these exact same things. And these type of the ones that made it tough for me to sleep. But let's talk about, if you don't mind, kind of set up I believe there was I believe it was a woman that you watched take her own life.
It was a male.
Okay, a male.
Yep. It was my second year on the job. And this gentleman was actually my age at the time.
Wow.
I was like 24, 23, 24. So we get a call. I'm actually riding. I was riding with the senior. He was like a senior vet. He had 15 years on. He's actually a sergeant now, and he still talks about this to guys because I was driving, and that plays a part in it too. But basically, it was like my second year on the job, and we got a 911 call. And it wasn't our call initially. It was to another unit. It was in his zone. It was a possible suicidal male. It was 23-year-old male, and he basically was feeling depressed. He got into an argument with his girlfriend at the time, and he told his girlfriend that he was going up to a park that's up in the mountains, because the way Albany is, like, if you go up, you can reach like the mountain portion. He was going to go up to the mountains with a shotgun, and he was going to kill himself. And he took the shotgun out of the house. He put it in the car and he drove off. So the girlfriend called us. 2 units, responded there to get more info, and then they basically sent a couple other guys that just drove until they get further. So we were one of the ones that were just going to ride around until they give us a description of the car or whatever and just try to locate it. So guys get there. She has a license plate. She has the kind of car or whatever. And even like the state police, like there was other jurisdictions that were involved because they didn't know where he went. Supposedly he was supposed to go like 3 towns over. So they had even like the SUNY PD was out there, and about 20 minutes after the call went out, one of the units, 110, which is like, and for us, it's like it's a Albany PD car that's like it's my car now because I'm senior, but it's like in the middle. It's like a more rural area, rural zone. It's not like the downtown or the inner city. He picks the car up. He picks it up over in this like little suburban neighborhood. He's like, "Oh, I got the vehicle right here." Literally calls out with it, and about 20 seconds after he calls out, we're trying to pull it over. He goes, "Dispatcher, Storm River News, we got shots fired. So We're right around the corner. I'm driving. I go, there's an ambulance that was like going towards it. I go like around the ambulance. I'm going, because I thought they were in a freaking shootout. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm like, holy crap. So I'm trying to get there. And my partner at the time, he was like, slow down, yelling at me. And he's like, slow down, new guy. Like, you're going to get us killed too. And so we get there, and the car was parked, and basically the scenario was over. So what had happened was the kid had the shotgun in the car. I don't know why he ended up over there, because it really wasn't where he was supposed to be. But I don't know if he was like trying to go back home, double thinking it about like not doing it or something. But he saw that the cop was going to light him up. So when he did that, he grabbed the gun. He must have said, F it, and boom. And he shot himself in the driver's seat with the shotgun. Now, the shotgun kicked, and it kicked the car into neutral. So the car was in the middle of the intersection. And so I will go into detail about this a little bit, because I have never seen anything like this before in my life. And, they tell you that you're going to see some stuff, and, it may be later on in your career, maybe your first day. So I'd never seen, besides like wakes, I've never seen a dead body. I'd never seen nobody lose their life. I've seen people get seriously injured, but I've never seen anything like that. And, so half of his face was missing, and the one eye was open. And that's what kept me up at night, because they made me guard the scene, because they had to treat it like any type of homicide, I guess. I don't know. But I was brand new. I was the junior guy. So they said you have to guard the scene until the coroner comes, gets the body. And I'm standing and the kid is looking at me. And I'm like, and I'm looking at it because, the senior guys told me not to look at it. They were like, you don't need to look at it. You're going to probably see more like that. Like, don't look at it, blah, blah, blah. It's not even, and they knew, but I had never, it's my first time seeing it. So I had to look at it.
Yeah.
And I looked at it. I couldn't stop looking at it. So they carry it by, and I'm like, I didn't think anything of it. At the time, mental health and EAP for our department, it was almost like it was culture to just eat things, unless it was something really traumatic. Something like that would just be considered maybe an everyday thing. Like maybe that was just, it was a bad day for us, but that's not something like, some crazy traumatic event. So they don't send, maybe now they do it differently. I think now our policy is, anything that anybody needs to talk about, like somebody will reach out, but I don't think there's enough EAP members. But anyways, nobody reached out, and I'm new too. I'm new. Nobody reached out to me. Nobody said anything. I didn't think it was going to affect me. The only person that called me, he's a sergeant now, and he's a very good friend of myself and my brothers. He was a former Marine. He's a sergeant. He's about to retire. He's my partner, Josh Liacona. And at the time we were just patrolmen. He had just got back from Iraq, because he was a Marine. He got back and he called me that after work and he goes, yo, are you okay? And I said, yo, you know what, man, I'm not. And he goes,
that's good for you. Good for you, first of all, for saying that. Yeah.
So it was weird because I was having nightmares about it. I was having freaking nightmares, and now it's starting to not stress me out, but I'm going back and it's making me kind of like emotional because I didn't think that would affect me like that, but it turns out that I knew a lot of people that knew that kid. I didn't know him, but I was written like, then you go on Facebook and you're like, oh my God, and then a lot of people I knew were good for grew up with this guy. So now and he's my age. So I'm like, yo, man, like life is that fragile where you could just have everything or just be young and, and then it's done. And I'm like, and I had to stare at him like a dead body, like missing, mutilated. And then I'm like, so he said that night, he was like, we're going to go to the bar, me and I won't say his name, but the officer that initially pulled him over, he was like, we're all going to go to the bar and just have a drink, as squad mates, because we got to look out for each other. And I was like, you know what, that's going to make it worse. I didn't want to drink, so I didn't. But I had nightmares for a week about it. And I didn't say anything or like even address or anything until years later. Like when somebody because nobody asks you about it. When you ask me about it, and I appreciate that, but nobody asked me about it. And then I think back and I'm like, yo, I remember that one year, but I had nightmares and I never had nightmares about nothing before that. I mean, I had nightmares, but not about like a true event. And then it relived it for a week. I couldn't sleep. Yeah. And then I don't know, the next crazy thing happened. And then your brain develops this like callus where, like you can literally like have a smelly dead body and then go home and eat dinner with your daughter and, go to sleep. And we're supposed to do that every day,
Right. And that's where that robot thing comes in. Oh, you're just robots. No, you've just, I think we're better now about mental health. Just about everybody that I've spoken with so far that I've interviewed on my podcast, that's one of the main things they talk about is mental health. Yep. And it's gotten a lot better, which is good. But for me, it was tough for me because it's very similar to your situation, except we were there and we were watching the lady.
I think that's worse.
It was horrible because you feel so helpless. Here we are in an alley watching a lady with a gun to her head, and there's at least 4 officers there, and we're begging her, please put the gun down. And what are you going to do? You're going to shoot her? No, you're not going to shoot her. And I mean, we had our guns drawn because we didn't know she was going to turn it on us, of course. But there's another. Say again.
Suicide by cop,
Yeah, exactly. And it was another situation was, she and her lover had gotten in a fight or broken up or whatever. So she was going to end it. And we begged her to put the gun down, and she looked at us, took a deep breath. And as she exhaled, she just pulled the trigger and fell like a sack of potatoes. Wow. And we had to watch that, and then you're like, what could I have done? Should I have done? You couldn't do a thing. And then, I was on third shift, like you, and then you had to go home and just deal with it. I didn't ask for any help. And that was tough. Another call that was really tough for you was finding a baby. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So that actually wasn't too long ago, actually. And it happened. Timing is everything. the call happened. It was my last month working before I was able to go on a maternity. It was literally a month before my youngest daughter was born. And this happened last year. So we get a call. I'm working third shift. So now I'm working overtime. I work days now, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So I'm a salty day dog or whatever they call them.
We call you guys day shift slugs here.
Yeah, day slugs. So I was working some overtime, and the third shift is where it's at. You get all the young guys. You still get they see some action, and but they put the senior guys that we're OT. They put you in a nice car, and they say don't hurt yourself. And so we get a call, and it was to an apartment. It was a medical call, and it was for a baby and unresponsive. They don't say stuff like that over the air when it's that kind of call. Our procedure and policy is, they just say notes in the call ticket or whatever. And so, but when you get a 30, like a code 35, which is an unattended death, that's our code or something, everyone's going to look at the call ticket. And so I looked at it, and it was for a 4-month-old. It was for a 4-month-old that was unresponsive, not breathing, blah, blah, blah. Medical was there. So I shot over, and we had... this is me. Yeah, because I remember I had to drive. Yeah. So, all right. I didn't even realize that I had to drive the mom to the hospital. I forgot about that. Wow. So we get there. My partner gets there first. I'm like the third guy to get there. So by the time I got there, the baby, they were loading the infant into the ambulance and driving away. The dad was there, young gentleman. He was studying. It wasn't like a disheveled house. It was a nice house. It was clean. It looked like he was like, and he said, I'm in school, I was studying, and my son, I believe it was his son. He's like, my son was sleeping in the playpen, and he didn't know that you're not supposed to, like, when certain age, you're not supposed to put anything in the playpen with them, no blankets, no nothing. So baby got entangled in the blankets and suffocated, and he fell asleep. So he was like on the computer doing work, and he fell asleep, and he woke up, and he's like, oh crap, and he looked. Oh my God, that is so horrible. And he looked, and his daughter and his son was like not breathing. So he called 911. And it was weird though, because it was kind of calm, but the mom wasn't there yet. The mom wasn't there. So we had to hold the scene. Obviously, the baby goes to the hospital. One officer holds the scene. So there was actually 2 of us there on the scene. Detectives come, a supervisor's there. When my partner went with the body and the baby with the ambulance to the hospital, and we're trying to get a hold of the mom, because the mom wasn't there. So lo and behold, we're guarding the scene, and mom comes up, and she's like, "Where's my baby? What happened? What happened?" She didn't even know what happened yet. I couldn't even tell her. So my sergeant goes, you have to drive her to the hospital. Put your lights and sirens on, drive her to the hospital. He didn't really give me any instruction or direction if I was allowed to disclose what had happened or not. But I know from experience, I'm not going to be the one to listen. I'm not going to be the one to tell her that in a speeding car. But again, listen, she's the mom. She knows, you know what I mean? Like, she knows, especially if somebody's not saying, oh, they're okay immediately, then you know that they're just not telling you,? So she gets in the car, and she's like hysterical. She's on the phone with like her relative. And she's like, so-and-so like got rushed to the hospital and blah, blah, blah. And I don't know what's going on. And I'm sitting there, and I'm driving her. And she's like, is my son alive? And I'm like, ma'am, I don't know. I was like, I know EMS came, they did what they needed to do, and they got him in the ambulance, and they told me to drive you over. And I dropped her off at the ER. They were waiting for her, like the doctors and other cops, just to streamline her over there. And I didn't tell her anything. But I think she kind of knew. Yeah. And when she left my site, I was by myself. So, but I'm in the hospital. So there's like staff, nurses, and I actually started crying. And I was like, not like, but I was like, crying because my wife was she was like 28 weeks pregnant or something like that. And I'm like, that was so scary to me. And I started crying, and one of the nurses was like, are you okay? And I was like, I don't know. I was like, that would, because they all the staff knew what had happened. So I was like, no, it just kind of hits me more close to home because I'm about to have a daughter and in a couple weeks. And then I went home, I told my wife about it, and she helped me through it a lot. And it was just something that, that it's not nice, you know what I mean? And I think notifications are even worse. And I think the most difficult part about that was to have that interaction with the mother, and knowing me and knowing that I wanted to comfort her or do something, and I couldn't. I was helpless. And there's nothing worse than a police officer or a cop, because we're A types, when we feel helpless. So.
Exactly. Wow, that's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough. Well, let's lighten it up a little bit, because I'm gonna have to have you come back, because there's so much more I want to talk about.
I will come back 2-4 times. I mean, I have my own theories. I got my own nonprofit. I do a lot. I've been on the news. I may be the world's most interesting police officer now.
There you go. Well, let me get a couple of other things in here. Then I want to give you a chance to talk about your nonprofits for sure. Okay. But let's lighten the mood a little bit. And we're going to talk about some dumb criminals. I always say if the criminals were smart, we'd never catch them. The only reason we catch them is because they're dumb. They do dumb stuff. So let's talk about, set up the one, or tell us about the one that was trying to hide money in a very interesting place.
Oh, man, you cannot make this stuff up, people. I tell you. So we get... I had a couple years on. It's probably like 4 or 5 years on at the time. And I'm working third shift again, afternoons, 4 p.m. to midnight. And we get a call for a robbery. 2 gentlemen that were, they were middle-aged. They were walking through the park, that park that I said I used to chill at back in the day. And they were walking through, and they weren't from there. So the kids that were from there basically went up to them like, "Give me your money." You know what I mean? So they took, they robbed the dudes a couple $100, and the guys ran, called the cops, whatever. And we ended up, it was a group of them. So we ended up coming up on the group, and a bunch of them ran. We caught on to like 2 or 3 of them out of like 11, and the one guy, the one kid that we latched on to happened to be the one that had the money. So, but at first we didn't know, and he's a juvenile. So the way our department works is our detective unit is divided into, I think it's 4 or 5 units. One is like vice. Basically, there's different sections, but one does just basically juveniles and, children and family services. So you had to bring them down, get a relative to come down to interview them, all this stuff. And at the time, there was a senior detective there, and he actually got the kid to talk. And we didn't know what was going on. He's in the interrogation room with the kid or whatever, and they're doing their thing. And he just comes out. Me and my partner actually, believe it or not, now he is a child and family detective service detective now. Wow. And we were academy buddies. So we're waiting out front. We're waiting, to see if we're going to be the ones booking the kid or not. And Detective Leonard comes out, and he's like, all right, he's going down. We're going to book him for this. And he has the profits on him. And we're like, oh, okay, yeah. And they're like, yeah, it's inside of him. We're like, no way, man. No way. And he's like, yeah, you're going to have to bring him down to booking to the strip search area, and you're going to have to get it out of him. Yeah. But they were like, we're going to do our best to make him give it to you. Like, just because we were like, we don't want you reaching into a juvenile, and I'm like, I don't want to do that, man. Like, I'm quitting, man. I ain't signed up for this. So they talked to him, and he's kind of being difficult, but so we go down, and we're just basically talking to him, and my partner was like, kind of like, you could tell he was so disgusted and annoyed, that this was happening. And he just goes straight, because the kid's like embarrassed, because he's a young kid, he's 14. He was embarrassed too. And I'm like, listen, so my partner goes up to me and goes, listen, man, let's just put it this way. The last thing that you or me want to do is have me reach into your rear behind and grab the rest of the money. So do us both a favor, stop playing games, reach up there yourself and grab all of it and give it to me right now. And he does it. So we didn't have to touch him. And he did it. But I still think there was some up there. But collecting it, putting it in the bag. And I'm literally like, this is what being a cop is. You know what I mean? Like, this is, oh my goodness, you can't make that up. I got to call Verhagen after this and be like, yo, man, you remember that call? That
is hilarious.
So the kid ended up going down for a rob second. So unfortunately, young gentleman.
That is hilarious. And there's so much more I want to get to. But before I go, before we wrap this up, do you want to tell us a couple of things? If you want to tell us how to find you or follow you on social media, and also tell us about your nonprofit if you'd like to.
Yes. I got pretty popular on TikTok. I've only been on TikTok literally for like 3 or 4 months. You know,
Oh, wow.
I didn't know what it was. And then all of a sudden I got like thousands, and I got like, I think like 18,000 followers or something. But my TikTok.
Tell them all to follow me, because I only have like, 175 or so. I just finally this weekend got more followers than I'm following. So, hey,
yeah, there you go. And you know what? It's a weird environment, but it's my favorite social media platform after the fact, because like, I think it definitely, I get the most. I think cops in general on there get a lot more love than they do on Facebook or Instagram. Like for a while, it being a cop on the internet was like, people are weary about it. You know what I mean? Like criticism or threats or whatever. But TikTok, it's such a weird, bizarre, funny, laid back environment. You make these funny videos with a little bit of sense to them, and and people like them. So I'm at Walking the Beat on TikTok. And then I actually started, so I had an idea about 3 or 4 years ago about starting not necessarily an organization, but an idea revolving around mental health and wellness for first responders, military, and cops. So I made up this thing called Good Cop, No Donut. And, it was basically because I'm big into fitness. I actually have a professional card in natural bodybuilding. So I've been, I'm really big into fitness, but mental health too. So I started this idea, and then it kind of morphed into this YouTube series. So if you check on YouTube, it's Good Cop, No Donut, all caps. Okay. And then that's also my Instagram as well. I'm trying to separate my platforms a little bit, like maybe Instagram be more like fitness and stuff, and Facebook's family, and then TikTok is getting my point across and trying to deliver a message to the public. But lastly, we have I had a college friend of mine who's a cook, and he saw all the good deeds that I did throughout the city, and the news highlight me a few times around Christmas times, and because I do a lot of like charity work and things like that, volunteer work and things like that in my city. So he saw me on the news one day, and he said, listen, I always wanted to get involved. He's a really good chef. His food is phenomenal. And he said, I want to just cook meals for people, like good meals. And he's like, I think you can soothe people's moods and brighten their day just through their tummy. So I said, he's like, but I don't know. He's an introvert. He's like, I don't know, how to get out there or anything. I'm like, I know several places that will love a good food. So we basically started this thing, and it didn't have a name yet, but we went over to there's this public housing senior building in my old beat when I was a neighborhood cop. And these senior citizens, man, they are the best people in the world. And I knew that, they complain a lot. Their quality of life's poor. It's public housing, you know what I mean? And they're elder. So I went there with 50 meals, and we handed them out. And then he made a mission, and we called it 4C, Caring Chefs, Community Cops. And we've been on the news, local news here, and we're not nonprofit yet, because if nobody's ever been through that process, filing for that, it's a nightmare. Yes. And it's a lot. So we're in the process of doing it right now, but it's going to be a while. But we take donations through GoFundMe. And then we basically distribute 100% of what we go in. We try to match it and then put out 200% to the community. So what it is basically once a month, he cooks. We get money donated. We use it started out using our own money, because like I said, we match whatever we make that month, and we go out, buy supplies. He cooks all the meals. And then it's my job as a police officer, because I know the area. I know the people. I'm born and raised in Albany. I know area. Like we went to the city mission one time. We'd go into a corner that just has a lot of crime on it, just to establish a presence and hand out treats. You know what I mean? And all we do is we take the food. He's got the ingredients. We try to be as FDA, approved as we could or whatever. And he's got the ingredients. He puts them in nice containers with the mission on it, and we hand them out to strangers. And we try to continue to develop relationship, not only with the police department and public, but also just getting other people involved, because now I have volunteers. Like I have a security guard that volunteers with us now. He's a security guard at one of the hospitals. He wants to become a cop. It's not just police officers, but I'm trying to get more and more volunteers involved so we can just hand out meals in multiple parts of the city. And so that's 4C. And there's no Facebook page for it yet. What I do is I kind of just share all that stuff on my other platforms, but I was told that I should start a Facebook page or something, because we've done a lot. We've been on the news like 2 or 3 times for it in the last 2 years,
Wow.
Yeah. So, and this Christmas, we were able to feed 200 people.
That's incredible.
We raised I think we raised like $2,000 or something. And we fed, and we went and we fed, and we partner up with now there's a food bank, and we partner up with them. And when it comes to eating, nobody should go unfed, but there's a lot of people. There's a lot of foundations for food and stuff like that. But this is just so now what we're trying to do is what I think I can do is I'm going to start taking donations of other people's appliances or belongings that they could probably sell, but they want to either throw away. I'm going to start compiling all that stuff, and then I can find people that need it. Like I got a lady an AC the other day because I had an extra AC and she needed it for her kids. And I was like, yo, here, take it. So then I'm like, maybe I'm onto something. I'm like, I know a lot of people that just try to give stuff away on Facebook Market or whatever. I was like, I'll take it or even buy it at dirt price, and I'll just give it to people that need it, like one man's trash, another man's treasure,
Absolutely. And that is awesome. And really quickly, if somebody wants to support that, how can they support that mission?
All right. So the GoFundMe is still up. I just don't know. The link isn't really anywhere permanently. It's like on a feed somewhere back in December. So I'll have to get back to you on that, but I am going to start a Facebook page. I was supposed to start it last week.
Okay.
Obviously,
just let me know when you start that, and I'll put it out there. And obviously, like I said, we've got a lot more to talk about. I'm going to have you come back.
I appreciate it, and I got a lot more to say, and it's been an honor. I really appreciate the opportunity, and I'll come back 3, 4, 5 times.
I will do it. The honor is all mine. I really appreciate it. Again, my guest today is Sadaka K with the Albany, New York Police Department. This has been a pleasure. Thank you all so much for listening. Thank you for your support. And again, if you have any questions, any suggestions, just shoot me an email at 911what.podcast@gmail.com, or suggestions of who you'd like to have on. And until next time, take care and be careful.
Thanks for listening to 911 What? We hope you enjoyed the show. If you have comments or suggestions, please email us at 911what.podcast@gmail.com. And thanks to Carlos Bail Bonding and Eric Buchanan and Associates for making this episode possible.